Welcome to the Register's Report. My name is John Buckley. I'm the Register of Deeds for Plymouth County. We do a monthly news journal on real estate activity within Plymouth County. We talk about the trends in deeds and mortgages, foreclosures, and other issues that affect the real estate market. For the month of August, we saw some positive news. We saw an increase in sales, which we track by deeds, of a number of closings that occurred. In August, we recorded 716 deeds compared to 643 in August. Although we're down 12% year to date, we do see some hopeful results coming in the future based upon the low interest rates that we see across America. Our trend in mortgages has also been something that has been a little troubling with the low interest rates. A lot of people are not qualifying for the low interest rates because their properties are underwater, meaning the mortgages are higher than their property values. However, we still have a significant number of mortgages recorded in the month of August. There were 1,612 mortgages compared to in August compared to 1,432 compared in July. Year to date, we're down 7%, but I know the Federal Reserve has been continuing to act in ways to bring down interest rates and make those low interest rates available for more and more people. There was a program announced recently by President Obama to try to allow more and more people who are underwater to qualify at these historic low rates. People in the 15-year mortgages can get 3%, 4% for 30-year mortgages. It's an incredible opportunity for people to save money, and I think we need to continue to promote that message. In terms of foreclosure deeds and foreclosure notices, we continue to see an increase in foreclosure deeds and foreclosure notices by community. We're running a report on this screen that lists foreclosure deeds by community and foreclosure orders of notice. Orders of notice are the first step that we see recorded at the Registry of Deeds, notifying us that a property is in danger of being foreclosed upon. When a foreclosure deed is recorded, that means the property has been taken back by the lender, and the interest in the property is now owned by the lender. We still see the number of foreclosure deeds down over the first 7 months of the calendar year, down 39%. We still see foreclosure notices down 31%. But despite that, we expect a ramp up in foreclosure deeds and notices because national lenders are now moving on towards resolving those issues. There were issues of robo-signing, people signing false names to documents, and failure to file assignments that slowed down the process significantly. There are many reports that people will see in the news and have seen recently. The national attorney generals are after national lenders for using the securitization process, selling off mortgages into bonds that have caused part of the mortgage trouble. I mentioned earlier that President Obama has made a pledge to refinance millions of mortgages at today's rates. I did say that the amount of the percentage of mortgages right now is at a historic low rate. And I have to say that short sales, the ability of people to sell their property without incurring a liability, sell it for less than the mortgage amount, has also, according to reports, picked up almost 20%. Those are the trends in real estate in Plymouth County. We have a report on our website every month, www.plymouthdeeds.org. Go to the Register's Report and you get a report in more detail. I will move on to our next segment, segment 2, which is educational in nature, and I have appraisers this week as my guest. Sean Fitzgerald and Paula Wolf, two appraisers who will talk about how appraisers work in the appraisal community. Thank you very much. Welcome back to the Register's Report. This is our monthly news journal on real estate activity within Plymouth County. In this particular segment, we always try to do something educational in nature. In the past, we've had title examiners, surveyors, commercial real estate brokers, residential real estate individuals, and others that are involved in the real estate practice in the real estate market. Our guests today are appraisers, and they're going to explain to us what appraisers do, what their role is in the recording process in the real estate market. And so my guests are Sean Fitzgerald of Fitzgerald's Appraisal and Paula Wolf of Wolf Appraisals. Welcome, Paula.
Hi.
How you doing, Sean? Nice to see you again. Yeah.
Thank you for having us on.
So as an introduction for our viewers, why don't you start, Sean, and tell us the role of an appraiser in the real estate market.
An appraisal is an opinion of value, and an appraiser is someone who provides an opinion of value. So our job is to communicate to our client, who in most cases is the bank, the lender, what we feel the value of the property is. And that's important because if you buy a house for $100,000, you're not coming up with $100,000 of your own money. It's the bank's money that's at risk, and they're the ones who want to know, is it really worth that much money?
Paula, you want to add anything to that?
Well, there's different, I do a lot of bank appraisals. We also do, for lawyers, work, when there's a divorce, or Sean, you do a lot of legal work, and
Yes.
yeah, and it's all basically, it's an opinion of value on what the properties are worth.
So I think you both answered generally in your introduction about who hires an appraiser. You wanted to follow up with various parties that might hire an appraiser?
Well, I think my biggest amount of work comes from banks for mortgage work. So they're looking to lend money to the home buyer or refinance, and they want to know at that point in time what the property's worth and how secure that would be and how much they want a loan on it.
So how has the decline in the housing market affected the appraiser industry, Sean?
It's been very tough on a lot of appraisers. It's been a tremendous opportunity for many others. The majority of appraisers get their work from large banks, large mortgage companies. Most of those mortgage companies are gone now. They've been taken over by large banks. And then a number of us are fortunate enough to get our business from local banks, local credit unions. And those are the people whose money is really on the line. If you've got local banks and credit unions for clients, your job hasn't changed very much. But on the national scene, everybody knows it's a mess. Everybody's looking to lay blame somewhere. And nobody's actually come out and said the appraiser is to blame, but the conditions under which we do our job have become tightened. A lot more data is required. We have to communicate more than we did in the past. We have to document that we did in fact do the research, and it's probably good for the national scene. It's going to help us all in the long run, but in the short run, it's driving people out of the business. No, fees have not increased. The work has increased. The pressure to come with the right number is far more important. In the old days, everyone kind of wanted the number to be high in a rising market. In a falling market, the deal falls apart if the number's too low. Well, it always did, but sometimes that's the reality, and that's what the risk of a risk that a lender is taking now. They don't want to lend on a property that doesn't have enough equity in it to keep the mortgage paid for.
And the appraisers, when all of the defaults came and that big thing with the government, all that came in, part of what one of the big pushes was to get independence for the appraisers, because we've always said, you're working for people and they're like, well, we need 240 on this, and if you didn't bring it in for 240, which good appraisers never did, but you would lose the client, a lot of times. So we've faced that on and on, and then they came out with this independence thing, and as of, I think it was June 1st, 2009, no more, they made this rule, and there were no more brokerages. You couldn't work for a broker. So I probably had 5 or 6 clients, so maybe more at that point. And as of that day, they couldn't call me anymore.
Really?
I could not get my work from them. Everything changed. They had to order out through an independent company. So we kind of suffered through that, and then they came out with all these different rules, and now we've got a new form that came out September 1st, which continues to want more and more information, and yet the fees don't go up. We're mostly independent. Independent fee appraisers? We work for ourselves. We don't get benefits. So it's a good. I enjoy being an appraiser, and I think Sean and I both say you learn something new every day. He always says that. It's true. However, it's a tough business, and we've gone through some big changes in the past 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, no, we have some of those issues we're going to talk about a little later, but why don't we jump ahead to the point, how do you start an appraisal? How do you get it going? What information do you use? And how do you develop the package to do the comparison evaluation?
Okay. You want me to take this one?
Sure.
Well, first of all, you get an order with your scope of work, and you figure out what they're looking for. So, for instance, a bank appraisal for a mortgage. The first step that we do is contact the person to get into the property. Go to the property, you look at it, you inspect it, and then you compile. Basically, it's looking for comparables, and you want to try to find the most similar recent sales in the town, and then you kind of balance them off. Well, this has this is a plus, this is a negative. We put it on a grid, and usually you can come up with a pretty fair value opinion if you are good at what you do and you know where to look for the comps.
So what resource do you traditionally use to find the comps, Sean?
Well, stepping back a minute, the most important resource is your own eyes and ears. The actual inspection is very important. And in the run-up to the mortgage debacle, there were people who were appraising property without even actually seeing it. And there's so much technology available to us today. And we can, Google Streets, you can see the property without actually going there. But we go there, we physically inspect inside and outside, in the basement, look for things like underground storage tanks, look for flaking and peeling paint, which might be a health hazard with lead. But then we go looking for comparable sales, as Paula mentioned, and those comparable sales are available from a number of sources. The easiest is the multiple listing service, and that has a lot of data, color pictures, all that sort of thing. The Registry of Deeds is extremely important because that's where the real truth is. If somebody says I sold, if a real estate agent says I sold this property for $245,000, and then we find a deed that says $240,000. Well, if we look close enough at an honest broker's listing, at the bottom of that listing it's going to say that there were $5,000 paid by the seller in closing costs. And that's all legitimate. But we have to look at both of those sources of information to define which goes into which pocket of money. Then the local assessor's office is very important. And we can get a lot of that information online, but it's been my practice that once I've chosen my comparables, I actually go and get the printout right from the town rather than just doing it online, because that tells me all kinds of things about the history of property, if it's been sold in the past, if there've been building permits pulled, information about zoning and frontage and all that sort of thing. So those are the three major sources. And then, of course, there's always the conversations and what you see and read in the newspaper that give you a good feeling for values in general in the neighborhood or in the community.
In relation to that, I know there's been some conversations over the years about hiring someone from a local area that is familiar with the area, because those are factors in an appraisal. You want to talk a little bit about that?
That recently came. That was changed in the DOT Act. I think the competency. You have to be competent in the area that you're working. You need to understand that local market, and if you don't, it's written what you can do to gain that competency. But I mean, pretty much a good appraiser has his area or her area, and you know the market. And like Sean says, you have these you go to the assessor's office, and you become quite an expert in that market, and then it's easy for us to predict the ups and downs of it, and whether it's a decreasing or an increasing market, how stable it is. So.
Yeah, and that's an area of specialized local competency. And I know I always try to promote when I have individuals on the show that are part of an association. A little bit about how that works with the appraisers. I know it's very important for registers. I know it's very important for the assessors and surveyors, and they've all been very strong promoters of the things they learned from their association. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, we're both members of the MBREA, which is Massachusetts' strong organization. It's actually one of the strongest ones in the country. Very involved in the Washington part of it, and the foundation, and not the institute. But we have a great guy, Steve Sosa, who's running it, and we have a strong voice. I know before I've been a member for a long time, but it's your peers, and you really need to be part of an organization. Trying to be out there on your own, and you need to be able to make changes when they need to be made and have a strong voice. So,
do you need a certain number of hours a year? How does that work, Sean?
We do. There are 4 levels of license classification. So first thing you have to do is get your license. Trainee needs 45 hours of education, but then must work for the next 2 years to get at least 2,000 hours and accumulate 120 hours of education just to get a license. To go the next step, which is certified residential, and by the way, you almost can't get an appraisal assignment these days unless you're certified. That's 180 hours of education. And then I have what's called a certified general, which allows me to do properties besides residential. I can do commercial, industrial, and land. And that's 240 hours of education. Once we've accomplished that, we have to get 28 hours every 2 years of continuing education. That's all available online. It's been my experience that I learn best in a group setting. Somebody asks a question, I say, gee, that's a question I wouldn't have thought to ask. I wouldn't have picked that up in an online education situation. And by being involved, Paul's on the board of trustees of the Mass Board of Real Estate Appraisers. I was formerly on the board and I was the president. By meeting and greeting with the very best, you get involved in conversations, and you learn to think of approaches to value that are far more valuable to you than the person who just fills in the forms. That's the biggest problem. People who want to do this as a profession are always looking for the best way to do it. People who look at it as a job, all they do is fill out a form. And as long as the form's clean, then the big banks are happy. The local banks read everything on that form. They read all the addenda that you put with it, and they're concerned about the risk that's going out in their own community. It's probably pretty clear that I love doing work for small banks and credit unions.
absolutely.
And I don't want to solve the national problems. We didn't create them.
Right. No, I very much like to promote and show that all of these specialties are very important to keep up with training. A couple of years ago, there was a program that I participated in with the association with Bill O'Donnell of Norfolk County and Dick Howe from Lowell, and that was more to get a general idea of how to use the registry resources. But I could tell from that meeting and the meetings you're announcing in the future how detailed and trained you have to be to do this. And when you go out and you make that initial assessment, you're not just doing it with your eyes, but you're doing it with a lot of years of training and things that trigger in to do that analysis.
And they do require a lot of education. We always have to keep going forward. And one of the we do have to have one of the most hours, and they require so much to become an appraiser too. Just to start out, like Sean said, you start out with this amount of hours, but then you have to work for so long under someone before you can become an appraiser and be out on your own. And now the certified general and certified residential, anyone going in now, you have to have an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree. So they've really changed it. Before, if your brother-in-law owned an appraisal company and you were laid off, come work for me, and you're out doing them within a couple of weeks. That was before licensing. That's when I started, way back in the late 80s and 90s. But that was a while ago. It's all different now.
No, education's important wherever you are, whatever you do. There's no
But like
question
Sean
about it.
said, I notice it more and more. I like going to the board meetings so much because I'm very, very interested in everyone in that room, and they're experts. That's what you get from your peers.
And the next step beyond education, licensing, and certification is designation. There are probably 9 major real estate appraisal organizations in the country. And each of them offer a designation where we write a report that is going to be reviewed by our peers. And so it's nice to get information from your friends, but you kind of don't want them to be reading your report to see if you really know what you're doing.
Right.
But that's how you reach that level of professionalism that we're striving for.
There's certainly, we were joking a little earlier when I called Sean about the profile that appraisers have now. They seem to be in the news a lot more. There were changes brought about from federal legislation about customary and usual fees. There's rules that came out from Freddie Mac about the reports that you do. And there's also been a change in the marketplace as far as I can see, that there now are more national type companies doing the work called appraisal management companies, AMCs.
Yes.
And has that intruded into the business the way it was run before?
It has, and it's really a difficult situation because Paula mentioned the need for appraisal independence and local competency. Good friend of ours did a lot of work for a local bank. He only got assignments in, let's say, Abington, Weymouth, Rockland, Brockton, the Bridgewaters, and Whitman. Then the national people said, you're a big enough bank that we want you to spread things around. So now he gets 1 out of 20 for them, and he has to go to the Cape, where he's still capable, but it takes him longer. He can't do as good a job. And these appraisal management companies are inserted into they're in between the bank and the appraiser, and they're supposed to select the best appraiser. But in fact, what they kind of do is find the guy who'll do it for the least money, the fastest, and give them the number they want, whether that number is high or low.
Right.
So it's difficult. We all understand what the objectives are, but it's a little bit sloppy.
Well, there were, sorry, do you want to?
No, I was just saying, the idea of appraisal management companies and how the government looked at it, this will keep everybody independent, and you won't have any forced feeling where we'd lose business if we didn't bring in the number. But like a lot of things that happen in big business, they have to get a piece of the pie, they have to charge, and then our fees go down because they're taking part of it. And like Sean said, then it just lost the competency and the closeness. And what I enjoyed about this business was my clients and being able to talk to your clients, and they kind of took that away from us too.
Now, could you each give me a very quick synopsis based upon our time limits of where you think the appraisal industry will be going in the future? You want to start, Paul?
I think about it a lot because of my age, and when I'm at meetings, I see that there's a lot of older people. So there's not a lot of new ones coming in. So for me, when I look at 10 years from now, I think there'll be very, very qualified appraisers, but few, not half of probably what's out there, or maybe a little bit more. I mean, it'll be an interesting time for me to keep going, and luckily I'm on the right track by being involved in this organization and knowing people that have been around and can give me a lot of advice and information. But I see it's kind of going to be a little bit of a struggle. I think people are going to find out there's a shortage of us, and we basically can't be replaced.
Want to add a last thought, Sean?
Just that age is important. Judgment is a big part of the job, and hopefully judgment increases with age. The flip side of that is technology is taking a huge part of our business. The judgment still has to be placed over that technology, but young people are the ones who are going to embrace the technology, find ways to create the report faster, but still do the analysis, in many cases aided by computers, available stuff from the internet, that sort of thing. But I have good future vision of the profession, not of the industry. The appraisal industry is going to be gone. The appraisal profession is going to do very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one thing we know on our side and everywhere, the technology is moving at such a rapid pace. It's sometimes going too fast to keep up with it in terms of making sure that the quality is still there. But I agree with you that there will be changes in the future for all industries.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
It's our pleasure.
Thanks,
Nice
Paul.
to meet you.
Enjoyed
Thanks,
it.
John. Yeah, thank
you, John.
We have a lot more to talk about, and we'll do it again sometime.
That
Great.
sounds great.
Welcome back to the Register's Report. Again, my name is John Buckley. I'm the Register of Deeds for Plymouth County. In this final segment, we're going to talk about something a little more lighter nature. I appreciate Sean and Paula going into the various changes in the appraiser industry and the importance of an appraiser in terms of evaluating property for lenders. In this particular segment, you're going to see a couple images of things from our notable land record collection. One is Billy Gunner McGonigal. He was an individual involved in baseball back in the early days of baseball. He was an inventor of the catcher's mitt. He used bricklayer gloves in a game back at a time when nobody used gloves at all to try to keep their fingers from feeling the impact of the ball. He managed 2 National League pennants for the Brooklyn Bridegrooms, to the American Association pennant and the National League pennant, back-to-back pennants. He is the subject of a book that is out of when the Dodgers were bridegrooms, a recent book publicized about the history of the Dodgers, and certainly somebody of well-known athletic interest here in Brockton. The second one is a fellow by the name of Frederick Whitman Glazier. He was a photographer, traveled around primarily focusing on circuses, although he has a number of pictures that he's taken of the Brockton Fair. And in this year of the 100th anniversary of the Barnum and Bailey Circus, which will soon be coming to town in Boston, we thought you'd like to know a little bit about Frederick Glazier. He was well known for his photography. He has published numerous books about his photography. He's had exhibits at the Ringling Museum down in Sarasota, Florida. And if you ever have a chance to come across any of his work, it's really a credit to an industry that tells a lot just by showing pictures. And we always try to do something from our Registry of Plaques and Statutes. This particular month we're showing 2 children reading a book. It's a statute outside the Hull Public Library. The Hull Public Library was the home of a very famous Irish poet, John Boyle O'Reilly, who escaped from Australia after being sent to a penal colony. But Hull takes their library very seriously, and it's a great demonstration of how important it is for children to read. And the 2 children in this particular statute seem to be enjoying themselves. We try to cover a lot in a short time. We try to share our information. Again, go to our website whenever you want any further information. We do a blog, at least a few blogs a week, about information that we're involved in. We post our numbers in more detail on our website, www.plymouthdeeds.org. And if anyone has any suggestions for future shows, please email me. My email is on that website, or just give me a call. We try to bring up-to-date information about real estate activity and some information that people would find informative about real estate. Thank you very much, and I want to thank Brockton Cable Access Television for producing this show. It is something we share throughout Plymouth County and try to share this news. They produce it here at the cable station in Brockton, and it allows us to distribute countywide. Thank you once again, everybody.